On one hand, we've got so-called fitness experts overcomplicating triceps training and making it seem far more complex than it really is. On the other hand, however, more and more minimalist trainers have gone the other route, claiming that building a set of solid triceps is as simple as bench pressing frequently and getting progressively stronger. The truth, however, lies somewhere in the middle. Sure, there are those genetically gifted individuals whose triceps would grow from nothing more than a few bench press sessions each week, but they are the exception. You see, building a set of horseshoe triceps doesn't have to be this elaborate process where you hit them from all different angles. Likewise, it's usually not as simple as bench pressing every day. If you want to ensure maximal hypertrophy of the triceps, there are two things that have to happen. For starters, you've got to understand the anatomy and biomechanics of the triceps. Once you understand what muscles are involved, and more importantly, what function they're responsible for, choosing the right exercises and how to perform them more effectively becomes obvious. Second, once you've got your 2 to 3 key movements, focus on progression. If you're performing the right exercises using proper form and gradually increasing the load, for example, increasing reps without sacrificing weight or increasing weight without sacrificing reps, your triceps will grow. In this video I want to go over the basic anatomy of the triceps and their functions, and then I want to go over what are, in my opinion, the only 3 exercises you need for building horseshoe triceps. The anatomy of the triceps. The triceps are comprised of 3 heads located on the posterior and lateral aspect of the upper arm. The triceps are split into a long, medial and lateral head. The long head, which is located toward the back of your arm, is the largest of the 3. The lateral head, as the name suggests, sits on the lateral aspect of the arm and is most visible from the side, and the medial head, which is mostly covered by the 2 other heads. When all 3 heads are well developed, they merge together to give the coveted horseshoe appearance. The main function of the triceps is elbow extension, straightening out the arm. Anytime we extend the forearm at the elbow joint, all 3 triceps heads are active. The long head of the triceps, however, also helps to extend the shoulder joint or bring the arm behind the body due to its origin on the scapula. Now that we know what muscles we are working and what functions they're responsible for, it's time to give you the only 3 triceps exercises you need for mass number 1 primary pushing movement. The focal point of your triceps training should do a few things. First, this exercise should focus on the primary function of the triceps. Second, it should be a big heavy compound exercise that allows you to load the triceps. And lastly, rather than focusing on one portion of the triceps, it should target the triceps as a whole. That said, the bench press is the obvious choice. Research has shown that either a flat or slightly declined angle leads to the highest activation of the triceps. And as for grip width, studies have shown that the narrower you go, the higher the activity in your triceps. Research comparing a narrow grip, mid grip, and wide grip found that it was actually the narrowest grip that elicited the highest activation in the triceps. However, the researchers were also quick to point out the obvious flaws. For starters, this position is a lot less safe, putting both the wrist and the shoulder joint in a more vulnerable position. And secondly, the movement could not be loaded nearly as heavily as the mid grip, which shows similar triceps activity. So from a practical standpoint, a bench press with a grip slightly outside of shoulder width should be the focal point of your triceps training, although the relative activity may be slightly less the absolute load you'll be able to place through the triceps will be much higher, and because progressive overload is the main pathway by which we build muscle, the bench press, when not going so wide that you minimize triceps activation, is your best bet. Overhead extension. Because the long head, the largest of the 3 heads, actively crosses the shoulder joint, it's also involved in shoulder extension. That said, if you want to emphasize this head of the triceps while also efficiently hitting the other 2 heads, you want to place your shoulder in a degree of shoulder flexion. Exercises such as skull crushers and French presses are great for putting an emphasis on the long head. To the degree of shoulder flexion. Personally, I suggest going into a greater degree of shoulder flexion by performing a standing overhead variation with a cable. my variation of choice would be the unilateral overhead triceps extension. Not only will this have the long head in a stretched position at the bottom of the rep, there will also be tension at the top of the rep due to the cable's resistance profile. This unilateral variation can also lead to a greater mind-muscle connection with the long head of the triceps, something some people have difficulty achieving. Simply touching the working muscle with your non-working hand, known as tactile stimulation, increases neural activity in the area, thus increasing the amount you're working the target muscle. Pronated pushdown. According to EMG studies, cable pushdowns with a straight bar or V-bar elicit the greatest amount of activity in the lateral head of the triceps. This is due to the high degree of internal rotation of the elbow, essentially bringing the origin and insertion points further apart, which leads to a greater stretch on the lateral head. The biggest mistake I see trainees make when performing this exercise is loading up more weight than their triceps can handle, resulting in excessive shoulder involvement and uncontrolled reps. Not only is this dangerous, but it's doing very little for the development of your triceps. To perform this exercise effectively, start with a weight that you can actually handle without having to use momentum. Grip the bar overhand, lean slightly forward, and keep your chest up. Elbows should be slightly forward and must remain fixed during the entirety of the exercise. Push the weight down until your arms are completely straight and control the weight on the way back up. To ensure you are training the triceps through a full range of motion, make sure you are allowing the bar to reach chest level before initiating the next repetition. To summarize, make the bench press the focal point of your triceps training. Load the bar up and aim to get progressively stronger. Next, include some form of overhead extension to emphasize the largest of the three triceps heads, the long head. And finally, finish your workout off with a pronated push down to further emphasize the lateral head of the triceps. Would you like to see a leg training version of this video? If so, make sure to hit that like button so I know it's what you want. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.